they would just do joke names. And so Hazelip was like a disrespectful term because like it was like you would say that as like as a diss.
Yeah.
And then it turned into my family's name.
Damn.
Forever.
Sounds good.
Welcome back, everyone, to Black Bolt Podcast. Today we got Jesse Hazelip.
What's up?
How's it going?
Jesse's an illustrator, activist, cool guy, tattoo artist also.
Yeah.
And I met you at your show, which was hosted by Gage, our buddy Gage.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you had a really, really interesting collection of artwork. I'll let you just kind of run through the theme of that because it was really intricate, but the message behind it was super heavy.
So it started, I decided to call it Midnight Special, which is an old song that was about like getting out of prison. And initially it was just going to be like my work, but I try to like branch out and bring in other people to collaborate like as much as I can now, like share the platform, And so initially like one of my homeboys was going to do the tattoo because two of my friends like learned how to tattoo in prison. And so I get tattooed during my art shows as protest. And so one of my homeboys was going to roll to do the tattoo, but he couldn't. So my other homie that just also got out of prison, who learned how to tattoo while he was incarcerated, we like worked it out with his PO to be able to come through. So that was a big part of the show, a very special part for me.
It was cool.
And then I brought in a couple of other artists, Ginger Dunnell and my friend Demian, and they did a performance. And then Rashid Jamal also did a
musician.
Yeah.
Yeah, I followed him on Spotify right after that. I was like,
did you see the?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
It was so ill.
It was great.
Yeah, he's a rapper and he just really talks some truths.
But why were you getting the tattoo?
So when I brought in Ginger to be a collaborator, I've been wanting to collaborate with her for quite a while, and so she just had another loss in her family, that she had another nephew or her nephew committed suicide in regards to incarceration, and that's the second person in her life that's committed suicide due to incarceration. And so she wanted to do some sort of like memorial mourning aspect because that had just happened. And so she decided to do this piece where she braided sheets together. Because when you're locked up, a lot of people, like they'll tear sheets, braid them, and then hang themselves. That's like a common way of committing suicide in prison. And so that was kind of part of her mourning and grieving process. And so she created those, sent them to me, and then I wrote some memorials on those in calligraphy, and then I wrote some like rest in peace. And so I had James, my friend James Allison, that just did 10 years, and he was the tattoo artist that came down. And I had him tattoo a memorial on me of a rose with a braided sheet coming down as a stem. So that was all how it tied in together.
And that was also, you were doing it inside of a frame that was the size of solitary confinement.
Yeah, I had started, when I first started making work about the prison industrial complex, I consciously would build cells that were the same size as solitary. So it's 6 foot by 9 foot approximately. They vary a bit, but it's not much space. And the first one I built was a part of a show I had in Chelsea in Manhattan. And at that same time, I was kind of mirroring what James was going through, because he was in a solitary cell that same size, but with another person. So he was in this tiny 6 foot by 9 foot cell 23 hours a day with another person. And luckily they got along though. Like they were tight. And so yeah, I've been trying to kind of keep on track with that. The cell has kind of varied from show to show, but I really like trying to give people perspective of what that looks like, what that size looks like. I'm going to keep expanding on that as I go, but I just really want to nail that into people's head of like, there's something wrong with this picture. Those kind of living situations are inhumane, and I feel like they're torture. As far as besides just being that small, but being solitary, being alone that much, it literally drives people out of their minds. And I think it's an inhumane practice.
Yeah, it seems like the prison system as a whole has just become so inhumane and almost like a modern day slavery system.
And it straight is. I did a lot of my research. A lot of it's based around Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow. And it's a really amazing book that it paints the true picture of our prison system goes back to enslaving people right after slavery was abolished through these laws called the Jim Crow laws. So it was a way to keep people, black people, in chains, but now through our legal system, right? And so it started with those Jim Crow laws, which were really racist. And it just slowly, the rhetoric changed and the wording changed, so it was like more socially acceptable. But it was all still trying to keep black people in chains. And now, it's really obvious if you look at the numbers of who's in prison, what color of people are in prison, and also what class of people are in prison. Yeah. So it is a slave workforce.
And they're like some of them are for profit, right? Like for-profit prisons.
Well, that's the private prison industry as a whole. They're monster. And when James came out this trip, he was incarcerated in a private prison. It was a CCA facility in Mississippi. And so we were corresponding throughout the last 10 years, like through letters, and sometimes he would get a cell phone smuggled in. And so I finally got to talk to him whenever he came through this trip about asking, like, expand on some thoughts. But at one point he had told me about having an Xbox or asking money to get an Xbox in prison. And I was just like, what do you mean an Xbox in prison? Right?
Yeah.
So he's like, oh yeah, because like when you're locked up in California at one of the prisons, you're close to your family, this and that. But they have these private prison facilities like all throughout the country, but they want to keep their beds full. So they would do these incentive packages to be like, if you go to Mississippi, you can get an Xbox.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like little bribes?
Like straight, but I mean, it's fucked up because like you go out there and you can buy an Xbox, but they're hella overpriced, right? And so you get out there, and the fucked up part about what he was telling me about the private prisons is you get there with all these incentives, like different like foods and like just bribes, right? Mm-hmm. But then you get there and then they withhold programs from you. So it's harder for you to get out. So you can work on your points. You can get a certain amount of points, and the better points you get, the faster you get out. But they'll just like be like, oh, we didn't get your letter, or oh, we didn't get this. And so it just like stalls people's process of getting out early.
Because they want to keep their beds full.
They're part of their contracts with states is that their beds have to be full. So they'll go in and they'll be like, hey, we're going to take over your prison because you're losing money to your state with whatever. But they'll make the state sign contracts that'll say like the beds have to be at 95% capacity.
Which is a crazy concept.
The purpose of a prison shouldn't be to stay full.
Yeah.
Like think about like how deeply rooted that problem is. If your incentive is to keep people in prison, like what are you going to do to keep people in prison? And like how is that legal in the first place? But like what is going on where we need to go find people to keep these beds full? Like, how far does that bleed down, you know? And it's just so corrupt. Like, just that aspect is sickening, right? But it gets worse. Like, they'll brag about recidivism rates at conferences because they'll go do these big, like, you know, everybody has like their conferences where they'll have these big private prison conferences, and they'll be like, oh, they'll brag about their high recidivism rates. Like, invest in us because 80% of people come back, you know?
Wow.
So they're not trying to rehabilitate. That would actually lose them money if they were rehabilitating. It's so disgusting all the way through, you know? Because also think about, like, if these, so that it's a very big investment, right? It's a guaranteed, like, recession-proof investment. And that's what money people like. And so, like, I don't know if you heard about, like, how those judges were getting bribed. Like, they were sending kids, like youngsters, like, because they were getting bribed by the institutions. And that's the only case where it was, like, proven and those judges were disciplined. But like, you know that there's money being passed around to keep people in prisons, you know?
Yeah.
Jeez.
So we need to abolish private prisons. Like, we need to abolish. That's like one of the biggest things that we could do for prison reform is to abolish private prisons, because there's nothing good going on in those spaces. Like, so another friend of mine, I'm not going to say any names, right? The response to violence is really slow in private prisons because they don't hire professional COs. They do not hire officers. They hire people off the streets that are not officers. And so they don't have any incentive themselves besides a paycheck to go break up a gang fight.
Really?
Right?
I guess that's just, that's their job description. And if someone gets hurt, it's no skin off their ass, really.
So there would be like a stabbing, right? And nobody would show up for like 45 minutes.
Really?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty bad.
And there's no discipline going out towards these COs because nobody gives a fuck. You know? It's really sad. That was like what I went through the jail system in San Francisco, just county. I got arrested for graffiti, and that was like when I got like my first like taste. I mean, I had been like harassed and in handcuffs like more than I can count, but that was my first time getting processed because I'm a white person. It's the only reason I am not in prison. And but going through county, I was just like, wait, this is fucked. Just the way they were treating me in county jail. And I could only imagine like what it was like in prison or in like more, because actually SF County is pretty chill. You know, LA County is out of control. Rikers Island, out of control. And so just that little taste was when I decided to start making art about it. Because I was like, okay, this is fucked just here. I can't imagine how bad it is elsewhere. And the more I researched it and the deeper I went with it, it was unbelievable. That if you read The New Jim Crow, and I recommend that everybody reads The New Jim Crow, it really breaks down how racist the system is from top to bottom, through and through. There's no part of our system that is not racist.
Yeah.
Can you give us a summary of why? Or like what you took away from that
book?
Book.
Well, so I mean, it goes back to slavery. Like, it goes back to the fact that we were okay with slavery in the first place, and the way that we viewed black people as this workforce that didn't deserve any fair treatment. And then, I mean, look at how begrudgingly we like freed slaves when, I mean, there was a war about it, you know? And so yeah, it's like they had no, I mean, it's still really apparent today how, like, I mean, there's still black men and women being murdered on our streets by our police force. you know, and so if our police are getting away with that, and then they are not being prosecuted on it because they rarely are. I mean, that right there is clear evidence to me that there's racism and corruption in our system. If black people are being murdered, unarmed black people, and there's no disciplinary actions happening because of that, or if there are disciplinary actions happening, they're very light and they're like a slap on the wrist. That's a picture perfect example of racism at work, you know. Like I went to South Africa to paint murals, and they have an insane police force, right? They'll like straight rob you or whatever.
Oh, it's corrupt.
Yeah, they'll pull you over, rob you, this and that. But they don't murder people. Like I was getting asked over there, what is up with your police in this third world country? What is wrong with your police? And that was a really like big wake up call for me. Like, whoa, if this like country that country is so violent and so crazy, and they're like, what is wrong with your police? That was a really big wake up call, you know?
Damn.
Yeah.
That's intense.
Yeah.
So now you're doing artwork that all kind of has the message around the police and the government issues and within America. The drawings you had around too. I mean, those were with the police helmet and the skull on the inside. We haven't really talked about those, but you're super talented, man.
Thank you.
Those are really well done.
Thank you.
The detail, like what kind of pencil are you using on those things?
Those are actually ballpoint pen drawings.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. I fell in love with ballpoint pen like as a little young graffiti writer, and I went through a couple different art schools and like learned all these different techniques, and I came out and I was like, I miss ballpoint pens.
Wow.
You know, like,
such a simple instrument.
or
You know, like
yeah.
the most commonly owned, and you're just making the most out of it.
Yeah, and it's also really like heavily used in prison. you
Makes
know?
sense.
Yeah, because a lot of my work just I tried to like kind of limit myself to like in certain areas of like what would be used in prison, and also I just really like the medium. And now they also make like archival ballpoint pen ink, you know, so you can get like nerdy with it too. You know? But yeah, the skull, I did a series of 3 skulls, and it was about 3 areas of war within our country. The war on drugs, which is kind of just rhetoric for the war on people of color, right? And for that, I did the riot cop, and I was kind of branding the police as like the Grim Reaper because that's how they're behaving now. And so in the drawings, it's a ballpoint pen drawing of a skull and a riot helmet, and in each one of the skull's eyes, I put upside down peace signs, and that for me is kind of a call to arms of like no justice, no peace. Like we need to be out in the streets protesting these things. Like there is a pretty good activist scene, but like we need to be out just kind of raising hell because there's so much gnarly things happening pretty much every day. We need to be out making noise about it. And so then another skull is the War of Colonization. So I used a conquistador helmet with a skull with the upside down peace signs in the eyes. And our country was founded on genocide of indigenous people of the country. And that also it's still happening, but it's just the rhetoric has changed with that as well. You know, now we're still breaking treaties. We're still killing indigenous people, and we're displacing indigenous people. And the indigenous like fight is rarely even regarded. And like the Standing Rock was great because it finally got like indigenous people into the press. I felt like that was a good victory of Standing Rock, was getting at least acknowledgement for our Indigenous brothers and sisters. There's a lot more that we need to work on with that, and just acknowledge their existence. And then the other skull, it's a Roman skull, and on it says the war will feed itself. And so in Latin though. And so that one's just about our war. Just we're always at war,
Ongoing.
constantly at war.
Yeah, it's like ever since I can remember, you know?
Yeah, it's our military industrial complex of just the war is feeding itself.
Yeah.
And it's just never stopping. And that's another thing we gotta abolish.
Yeah.
You know.
Do you think people just get distracted because there was so much media coverage of police shooting unarmed black people, and then there was protests and all this stuff, and all of a sudden it just kind of stopped? And like part of that's because the media was covering it less, maybe because people are trying to make sure they don't get caught doing it, or they're actually backing off because they're getting caught so much or whatever. But I also feel like there's this ADHD among society, you know.
Yeah.
I guess once there's something else to yell about, people are just going to yell about that.
Well, I
mean,
think it's like apathy, and we're way too comfortable. It's too easy for people to be comfortable, especially when they're not facing prison and they're not facing death, right? So, in the super marginalized communities, like there is a lot of noise going on, but it doesn't get covered, right? Black Lives Matter does a lot of good work all over the country, but it doesn't always get the press that it needs, you know?
Yeah, the press seems to highlight always the bad things that are happening. It seems
Yeah.
like.
But I mean, there's also, it is very ADHD, and like it's just there's always something new. And that idiot that's in the White House, like he's very good at throwing out distractions, and like it's very tactical, and the press is eating it up too. It's really frustrating. I wish that the press would be like, we know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, we're gonna keep focused on these issues, these important issues, not like this other lie he said. He's saying lies because he knows that they'll be like, well, we fact checked this, and
Waste their time doing that stuff.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's tactical, you know.
Yeah.
Those idiots are really good at. They have like think tanks that they're paying to, you know, come up with these schemes, you know.
Well, I think journalism as a whole has just gone in a direction that is not as effective, and it's even still just based on how many ratings are we getting, views, and we need to get the eyeballs, and then of course attach the ads on the eyeballs like in the commercials, and they're not always going for the important stuff.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to trash talk journalists, so
Not specific
'Cause they're-
journalists, but
yeah,
you know what I
there's-
mean? Like the
yeah.
internet's all titles. Like it's all like, what is the catchiest title? What's going to get the clicks?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what
Yeah.
everything has become.
yeah, I would think that's probably more like the heads of the beast, you know,
Yeah.
that are like, I feel like the journalists are probably doing what they can, and the heads of the beast are like, well, we need to make money, you
Right,
know?
the
Like,
network
the
people,
networks
yeah.
they're thinking about the bottom line,
Yeah.
you know, and they're the ones like that don't, you know, like the journalists get like the brunt of the hate, and it sucks because they're out there doing the work, you know. And I mean, not every journalist is on point, you know, but there are I've met a lot of awesome journalists and people out doing good work. You know, in Standing Rock, like there was some amazing people out there.
Yeah.
You know, like
And that's what I meant. Like the people running
Yeah.
the networks are the ones like
Or-
doing the Roman like thumbs up or thumbs
Yeah.
down on things, and
yeah.
it's all
Well, I
in
think
their
that's-
best interest.
That's also where we can vote with our dollar type of thing, you know?
Yeah.
Like
True.
go look at Unicorn Riot, you know? Like look at what Unicorn Riot is putting out. You know, they're a really good press team, you know?
Yeah.
They cover real shit, and they're down to go be on the front line and get arrested, you know?
It seems also like documentaries nowadays, those are a great output of information for people that's not your typical press.
Yeah.
feel like
That's true.
People get a lot of benefit from that.
Yeah. No, there's some good stuff coming out. And 13th is one that's on Netflix. Have you seen that one?
Not yet.
So that one's really good. And it Michelle Alexander is on that one.
Really?
Yeah. And it talks about the prison industrial complex, mass incarceration, and it's really good. Like that's a really well made, very important, like progressive documentary that's out right now.
Okay.
Yeah. So everybody watch that one.
Yeah, I gotta scope that out.
Yeah.
So I really liked how your show, how everything you played on, like all the different types of mediums. It's like you had your illustrations, you had your installation, you had music, you had your live art. You also had like a massive wheat paste. What was that wheat paste like? How'd you do that?
I've been doing wheat pastes like.
But it was huge.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a normal wheat paste.
I like going big. Like
Yeah.
I feel like it helps talk about, like, scale is really good to talk about problems.
Yeah.
You know, it's like this is a big problem, and I try to like emphasize that in scale of work. So that one, I mean, I just have a printer that I go to that does like large scale black and white prints, you know, and I just piece it together. And
Yeah. I was trying to figure out how many pieces that was, because I was getting like up on it. I'm like, I'm not sure how many pieces of paper this is.
That was like, it was like four panels wide, and they're 3 feet wide each.
Yeah.
And then however tall, I forgot how exact tall it was. It was big.
Yeah. How tall?
Yeah. But I mean, that's how I do like my street stuff too, you know, like same kind of approach. Like, I mean, it's a lot different because it's illegal and like on blast, you know. But and I haven't been able to do an illegal one that size yet.
Yeah,
like
that would be wild if you did.
I'd have to like I'd have to be really prepared for that.
Very strategic about how you do that.
Yeah, but I started doing those in Oakland when I was out there, and I was doing these. Have you seen the Buffalo Bison or Buffalo Bombers that I did?
Oh yeah.
I would do those really big, and just like on blast on the street, because I like to do stuff like right where people are walking so they can engage with it, and also so they can just get close, be a part, you know. Like I called them like site specific installations, you know, and illegal installations.
But that's kind of the point of it.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, like most street art is meant to be experienced in a unique way on the street.
Yeah.
You don't want it to be tucked away. You want it to be kind of like in people's face.
Well, a lot of people don't go on blast like big though, you know.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Because
there's risk. There's a lot of risk.
There's a lot of risk.
Yeah. Let's
I
face
get
it.
it. So that I just like to really get just like big and approachable too, you know, because I feel like the thing I like about like graffiti and whatever, I think street art is a weird term now because it's so oversaturated, but vandalism in general, like it's just the people's choice, you know. It's like free advertising, and it's also like a gallery for the people, you know. And so everybody gets to participate, you know. If you hate it, you go try to take it down, or you write on it, or you paint over it, or like the ones I did in Berkeley, like they would buff around it. The community embraced it.
Well, they're really well done.
Yeah.
But you know.
I had one guy. I'd put one up in the dog patch before it was like gentrified, or I think it was like when it was beginning to get gentrified. I put it up on a construction panel, and I got this email, and it was like, "You put your poster on my wall." It was like the subject, and I was like, "Fuck, I'm going to jail."
Oh shit!
But then it was this dude, the owner. And he's like, I am preserving it. So he preserved like the panel, like it was like this wood panel that like was blocking off this part where they were doing construction. And he like wrapped it in plastic and he preserved it. And then he had that board moved to his lobby of his new building.
What?
Yeah, and then,
That's cool though. I mean,
oh, it was
yeah.
amazing.
Super
And he's
cool.
like, I'm also like going to court to fight because the city, if you don't buff, you get fined.
Yeah.
And so he's like, I'm not buffing this. So he had to go fight
What?
the system in court to
Wow.
like preserve my peace. I was like, that's so
Damn.
weird. It's
That is really,
surreal.
that's cool though.
Yeah, no, it was very flattering, you know.
Yeah.
I was like,
How do you
oh.
get your email? You know, like,
Well, that's the thing is
Yeah.
like when I first started like putting stuff up, I didn't like I had like my graffiti name, but that was a different like thing, you
Yeah.
know, like graffiti, like my graffiti life was different than like that, like the posters, you know,
Mhm.
they weren't really combined. So I didn't have like it's like alter ego
Right.
for my posters, right? And so people just started like I got a show pretty quick at this gallery in San Francisco, and like people just started like posting my real name like with my on Flickr. This was before Instagram.
throwback.
Right.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. Or maybe Instagram was there, but it was just like something nobody used, you
Right.
know?
Yeah. Up and coming.
Yeah. But I don't know. It just like my name got attached with my work. And so it's not hard to like track me down, unfortunately. I kind of like am thinking about trying to like start doing this now
Yeah.
to like do some real dirt,
Rebrand a
you know?
side project.
Yeah.
People do that. Artists do that all the time.
Yeah.
They just start a side project, even when people already know who they are, just with
Yeah.
a different name or.
I think it
Vice
gives
versa.
them more permission to experiment a little more.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
Just like, I always want to try this. I think my regular audience might hate me for this, but I'm going to try it anyways.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some ideas I have, but I can't even talk about because it's like shady shit. But
Yeah.
like, it would be really cool, like vandalism, you know?
Yeah.
And like, I have a few things in mind, but there's no way I would attach my real name to it. 'cause
Right,
it'd be, like,
right.
felony shit.
Yeah.
Well, hey, we have people with masks on
Yeah.
frequently.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
what
tight.
you mentioned how like street art's a weird term. What do you think of like street art in Portland? How it's changed or what it's become,
You
or just
know
as a
what?
whole?
I don't know much. I'm only like, this is going into my 4th year here.
Mhm.
So like, I don't know much about Portland, right? Like I'm not from here. I didn't come up here, and most of like the show the other week was my first show here, you know, because there hasn't been really much like spaces that I'll fuck with here. So everything has been travel for me. Like I've
Okay.
been doing most of all my shows and gallery things have been in other states or other countries.
Mhm.
And so I'm still kind of like ignorant to the Portland scene. Like I'm
Yeah.
slowly meeting people. I met some like young cool cats like No Worth and Asinine.
Yeah, love Asinine.
Yeah, they're cool.
Yeah.
I like what they're doing. But I don't know too much. I mean, I obviously keep an eye on who's up, you know, but I mainly see like bombers, like taggers. And so
Gotcha.
that's kind of like it. But as far as street art here, I haven't seen many people like super on blast, you know, like in other cities. Like they're kind of more in the cuts, like instead of on blast. Like
an aggressive way.
just like, I don't know, I'm not going to make enemies.
No, you're good.
Well, I mean, Asinine, I like what Asinine and like No Worth are doing, like kind of like bigger stuff. Like I would like to see more on blast spots that are like bigger and in people's faces. I feel like a lot of people here are safe.
Well, they got into sticker culture, and
Yeah.
you can't make huge stickers, but
You can because they're posters.
I
and
guess you
put 'em up
can.
with
Yeah,
wheat paste.
yeah, it's true. It's
It's
true.
pretty easy.
But I feel like that's what's kind of happened. People like the convenience sticker, and they're cool stickers, but they aren't big. You know.
Yeah, and not to like, I don't know.
I see what
was
you
never,
mean. Yeah.
I was never much of a sticker fan besides like slap tags to practice tags. Like, because I felt like it was, I don't know, I was like a vandal. You know, like I like to like do big shit, like big spots, but I'm not trying to trash talk. Like, do whatever makes you happy. To each their own.
Yeah. That's just seems like the Portland way of doing things. Like Portland's not exactly big and flashy
Yeah.
generally.
Yeah.
You know? I mean,
I'm gonna push people to go big.
I think that's good. I think
Yeah.
that's like the artist within you. You know, that's like the true artist coming out right there. It's like you might not be a true street artist, but like you are a true artist trying to make a message and make it as big as possible.
Word.
And you also happen to be a really talented street artist. You know, like that's what I see.
Word.
So you're doing both really well.
I'm like way more chill now. I've chilled out because like I'm older, I have a kid, and like, so I'm
Yeah.
not like, I don't have that like young like bomber mentality anymore. Like,
Yeah.
I miss it, and I do have some plans to go catch some spots and this and that, but like my relationship has changed a bit with it, you know, like due to just growing up and like can't catch any felonies now, you know.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw this kind of style of graffiti, and it was in Brazil or something, where they scale up to the top, usually by fire escapes, and they go all the way down the side of the building.
Those guys are gangster. Yeah.
I was blown away. I'm like, they're going up massive buildings and just like scaling down the side, just like
Yeah.
dangling on the fire escapes.
They're on some Spider-Man shit. Like, I love that graffiti. Like,
It's cool.
yeah, it's really impressive. And just on some other shit. Like,
Yeah.
they're on a whole different scale. And their letter form is so cool.
Yes.
It's so unique. It's
Yeah.
so Brazil.
Yeah.
Like, it's just Sao Paulo. It's just like, that's what's up with them, you know? Like, that's what I love about vandalism. Like, I'm always, like, I don't do much, like, traditional graffiti anymore. Like, but I always love, like, tags. Like, tags are, like, my favorite, you know, throw-ups, like, real throw-ups. And so I'd always kind of keep an eye out for what's happening, what's popping around town.
Yeah, I see. I saw someone that kind of tried to do that on a building.
Oh, really?
Right across from a little Fremont Park. So I was
Word.
walking my dog, and I looked over. I'm like, wait a minute, like
Yeah.
that's. It looked like they tried. They started doing it, but then once it came to the second floor down, they just stopped.
Yeah.
But you know, if they were true South America, they go all the way
Word,
down.
yeah.
You know, there's.
I mean, but I heard some insane stories about like they'll do things just to get the press there. Like these dudes would like light the building on fire while they're chatting.
Oh my
So,
God.
Like the press would show up to film the fire, and they're like catching tags.
What?
Yeah.
They're out of their mind.
Whoa.
Are you kidding me?
I'm not condoning this. I'm not condoning this. Don't get any ideas, Portland.
I don't think anyone in Portland's gonna do that. Don't worry. That is wild.
Yeah. That's some other shit.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the video of this guy. He had a guy filming him do it.
Yeah.
You know, it looks sketchy as hell.
Yeah. I think that those, like, I mean, that's a whole different, like, world, though, because I'm sure, like, you could bribe your way out of, like, custody there, you know, type shit.
Yeah.
Like, that's just not really cracking here, you know? If you get locked up, you're going, I heard some kid here is facing, like, years, like, over just, like some vandalism shit.
That
Yeah,
sucks.
yeah. I think like Asinine was even saying that when he
Yeah.
was here. He was like, "Yeah, I got to be a little careful. There's a couple offenses."
Yeah.
So
I wonder if the Vandal Squad's, like, hip to your podcast yet.
they no.
Well, because when I was doing community service in the Bay, we had to go to this, like, sign in with the Vandal Squad because they
Really?
would take us out to go buff. And this one day we were looking back into their office and we could see that they had, I don't know if you guys remember 12 Ounce Profit. It was like the first, like, it was like a chat forum of like graffiti. It was like the first big one, and there was 50 millimeter, and then there was 12 Ounce Profit, and so every graffiti writer, pretty much in the United States, was all over 12 Ounce Profit. But we saw it open at the Vandal Squad, so like they were on
Really?
there like
Damn.
eyeballing it, you
Is
know,
that-
and so yeah. So
Damn.
I mean,
all the
they-
street artists do a pretty good job of like concealing their faces when they come on here, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they peeped it.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
wild though. Shit.
Yeah.
12 ounce, is that like what the spray can is?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's still 12 ounce is still around. I don't know what's up with their chat forum now, but like that was like always just. And they had a graffiti magazine back in the day too, When graffiti magazine, I don't know how many of those are made anymore.
Yeah, not too many
Yeah.
that I know of. I was always a fan of, it's not graffiti, but like Juxtapose and High Fructose. And I still love those magazines.
Yeah.
They're cool.
I love both of those.
It's
I met
just-
the owner of Juxtapose.
What?
Yeah. My friend interviewed me. So my friend interviewed me, or did I did a feature with them,
Mm-hmm.
and so my friend did like the photograph, and then but they didn't have my other homeboy interview me. This guy Judah Sapine, who is also a street artist. It was a rad because I wanted my homeboy to interview me. It was tight. It was like
Yeah.
a really fun interview. But the owner came up to me and she was like, "I loved your interview."
Cool.
And I was like, "What the?" I was like, "How is this real life?" It was.
Where are they
super
located? Like San Francisco?
I think the baby. It was in New York that
Oh.
I met her, and that was super flattering.
Their parties seem cool. They're like events.
Yeah,
I see videos of that. I'm like, man,
yeah.
they're doing it right.
Yeah, no, they're heading in a good direction.
Yeah.
Like they changed management, and like that new head editor is he has a good head on his shoulders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never heard of any of these groups except for Juxtapose.
Yeah, yeah. It's well, magazines as a whole, as of now, they're just in that weird transition period where
Yeah.
Yeah.
everything's becoming digital, and you
Yeah.
have to figure it out. Otherwise, you won't last.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can turn into the newspapers.
Yeah.
Those are, if they don't turn digital, they're screwed.
It's
Yeah.
a tricky time.
Yeah.
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 Because like, how do you stay relevant and accessible?
Yeah.
Right.
And like New York Times is like trying to get you to pay for a subscription, like this and that, and it's like so like hit and miss. Like, I don't know. It's like the weed industry. All the growers are like, I don't know how to make money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think that the newspapers are. If you're going to try to like replace the paper subscriptions with online subscriptions, I think they're crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's going to work. You're going to get some people who really don't care about money who'd be like, oh yeah, of course, I love my newspaper.
Yeah.
But for the most part, people who just want to read an article, they're just going to find that same article somewhere else.
They'll move on.
Yeah,
It's like the move on culture. It's just like
That's it.
you like swipe left.
Yeah.
Move on
next.
culture.
Next.
Damn.
Okay, let me look at the next one. That's
Yeah.
it.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So what do
Yeah.
you think is the solution to a lot of the problems that you're speaking about right now?
Well, this guy Sean King is doing a lot of good work as far as raising awareness about criminal justice reform. So it's pretty much we need to get, like they're working on getting activists like district attorneys like elected, right? And so that's a really good way to get like responsible, rational district attorneys that aren't going to just prosecute anybody that's black for everything, because that's been the problem. Is like prosecutors have the most power in the criminal justice system, and so they make a lot of the like decisions that really affect like millions of people's lives. So getting responsible people into positions of power. I think that we need to reapproach the way that we hire police, and like they need to get paid more, and they need to be vetted more. I really believe that there should be something equivalent to getting the bar exam
Yeah.
for police officers.
That's a great
That's
idea.
and especially the getting paid more thing, because they're not going to be so quick to try and lose their job.
Well,
Yeah.
that builds morale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
That's a good point.
And it's a hard job, but like if they were like if they were educated as much as lawyers were, like think about what our police force would be like, there's like no shortage of people trying to be a lawyer, because it pays better,
Yeah.
and
That's very true.
And it weeds out all of the like knuckleheads, like education. You're not just like, because right now it's set up like you have to have like a GED, and you take like an 8-week course, and then they give you a badge and a gun. That's insane,
Yeah.
and these
Is it
are
really
the
that
people.
quick?
Yeah, and it varies from like state to state and county to county.
Yeah.
But that's what it was a while back. So yeah, we need to reapproach the way that we handle our police force. We need to pay them more, and then there needs to be something equivalent to our bar system that lawyers have to get, that the police should have to pass. So that's more rigorous education, and that would weed out all the knuckleheads and the bullies, you know, because a lot of police are just knucklehead bullies that have a bone to pick, you know. And I mean, there was like a cop in Vancouver that was like down with the Proud Boy crew, you know, and I feel like a lot of police are like in cahoots with like white supremacist groups, you know, and that's really scary, you know.
Yeah.
And like in Rikers Island, there was like COs that were Bloods, you know, and so they were obviously biased, and the way that they would treat prisoners coming in, they would favor the Bloods. They would open up Crips like cells and let the Bloods in to like beat them up, stab them,
Whoa.
you know. We just need to really like take better. I mean, we need to like take better care of our police force, you know, and that includes educating them. You know?
Yeah.
Because with education, I feel like comes like tolerance and comes patience, you know, and like that's why a lot of like more educated areas are more liberal, you know, because like they're more compassionate, you know, trying to help, you know.
For sure.
Makes sense.
So more education, better pay,
Yeah.
basically just making it a better job.
Yeah.
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 Incentivize the right
I mean,
people.
that says something
behavior.
about the country as a whole. I think like education across the board
Oh,
is
yeah.
something that we'd all just need. But you're right. It's
Yeah.
in this specific force.
Yeah,
we definitely
yeah.
needed to raise the bar, literally.
I mean, even like to become a firefighter, it's a lot harder, you know? Like
Yeah.
they have to really bust their ass physically to be able to be a firefighter.
That's true. And they have to
you
learn
know?
fire science.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Pretty
it's
crazy.
not easy to become a firefighter, you know?
Yeah.
I love firefighters. I wanted to be a firefighter. If I wasn't like out being a vandal, I would have been a firefighter.
I've considered it a couple times. Seems like a decent gig if you don't get hurt.
Yeah.
Get
Yeah.
hurt doing it.
Don't they have prisoners fight fires? sometimes?
yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they pay them like $1 an hour or
And
something.
they get no love. Yeah, they get paid pennies, and then they can't be a firefighter when they get out.
Yes, that's
Damn,
right.
that's insane.
It's so
That's
messed up.
It's so
Yeah, what the hell?
backwards. It's like, what if they love doing that and they're good at it? Like,
Yeah, exactly. That's it. What if
And
they're
they
good
already
at it?
serve their time.
And they
you know.
can,
Especially
and they got what it
California,
takes. Yeah,
where they need firefighters.
Yeah.
Terribly, right?
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why they
No.
have. That's why they're having prisoners do it there, especially right
Totally.
because they need it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we need to like really reevaluate the way that we treat people coming out. You know, like that really
Yeah.
needs to be a lot more compassionate, because people can change. People can be held accountable, but they can also do better after they've served their time. Like my friend's on parole right now, and parole is so backwards to me, because it's like he already served his time. Why is he still having to check in for over a year under like the like gun of like going back to prison?
Yeah.
You know, he already did his time. Why is he still doing time
Yeah.
on the street, you know? And like the parole system is just another area to keep people locked up. You know, they want you to fuck up. They want you to slip up. They want to catch you slipping somehow so they can just lock you back up again.
That's
Right.
true.
Yeah, it's very predatory, and it's no bueno. Like there's so many elements that we just need to like tear it all down and start building from scratch, you know, like on all levels. But I feel like police, we need to end the war on drugs. We lost it, you know, like we were never winning it. There was, even when it was like initiated, there wasn't a need for it because it was fabricated.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they would give police incentives, because when they first introduced the idea of the war on drugs to police were like, we're fighting real crime. You realize,
Right.
you know, we're doing real work on real crimes. But then they gave them incentives, like cash incentives, to fight the war on drugs. And so drug arrests would bring in money for the police force.
Yeah.
And then they made it so they could keep whatever they confiscated. And so that's another like
Wait, they could keep what they confiscated?
yeah.
What?
Yeah. Yeah.
How is that legal?
Yeah,
make
exactly.
sense.
Well, they're the police.
That
And
is
it's
so
also-
ass backwards.
Oh, it's so whack, dude. And on so many levels too, because it's like it's not only like drug dealers losing their shit. It's like if your boyfriend's a drug dealer, then you were transporting a drug dealer, and so they could take your car, you know,
And then keep the car.
and then be like prove that you weren't. And if you're poor, you can't afford a lawyer,
Yeah.
you know. So they just stole your car. You know what I mean? And like, I mean. And they'll straight rob people on this. So yeah, a friend of mine was at the LA train station, and he had money on him. He got rolled up by two officers, and they're like, "Okay, what's this money?" He had like nine G's on him, which is you can have on you, you know. And they're like, "Well, what's this money? How'd you get this money?" And he said some bullshit, and so they stole it. They gave him like $200. They're like, "All right. If you can show us receipts on that money, like how you got that money, then like come talk to us." And then they just took off. And he like gave him a bunch of, he was like letting him have it. And then an hour later, these other officers rolled him up because he had given them so much attitude. And then they took him to an alley and beat him unconscious and handcuffed.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So that's an example of like what they can do. They can just rob you, beat you up, and dump you. But there's examples of that all over
Yeah.
the place. You know, just like I didn't have to deal with much of that. Like, but I would hang out with a lot of like my Mexican homies, and we would get rolled. But they wouldn't rob us, but they would illegally search us all the time.
Yeah. Well, how do you think it differed from Mexican to blacks?
Well, that's the thing is like, I mean, especially now, like Mexicans are getting targeted, but like,
For sure.
but anybody who is not white has been a target, like, in our country by our police force, you know, because,
Right.
and so a lot of my Mexican homies feel like they're not getting enough like attention because like the police, like in Southern California, they're insane the way that they treat, especially gang members. So if they were to think you were a gang member, even if you were just a graffiti writer, they would take you, roll you up, strip you, and take you to like 18th Street neighborhood and drop you like almost naked in hopes that you would get killed. And that's the LAPD, you know?
Yeah, man.
That would happen to graffiti writers and like people that they thought were gang members, you know? And yeah, I mean, there's a million stories of like how insanely corrupt our police are.
Yeah.
You know, that's not even scratching the surface on it, you know? Like I've been beaten up. Everybody I know has been beaten up by police, you know? For no reason, for having an attitude, for this or that, you know? Yeah, top to bottom, especially people of color, you know? A lot of white people don't have any exposure to this because of their skin tone, you know? Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you're doing making good messages out there in the world. And is there anything else you want to go into or topics you want to go over?
Well, make some noise. I want people to like really, especially white people, take some initiative and get out there and make some change, make some noise in your community. Start holding each other accountable. We need to really be constantly pushing for reform, for change, and not being apathetic. Like everybody's apathetic. If you're at home putting on Netflix again, like get off of it and try to go out. Like look around what's going on, make some noise. Like we've got to we've all got to work together. You know, get on your feet.
And how can people find you?
I'm on Instagram. My name Jesse Hazelip. That's the best way to find me. I have a website, jessehazelip.com.
Yeah, JESSEHAZELIP.
Yeah.
Is there a dot in there?
No.
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 Okay. Sweet.
Yeah, just jessehazelip.com, at Jesse Hazelip. I have a bunch of cool shows coming up. I'll be a part of a group show at the Herd Museum next year. I have a show coming up here in in a week though.
Yeah.
I'm going to collaborate with Chip Thomas. And yeah, look for me on the streets.
Cool. Well, it's a pleasure having you.
Word. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad you came by. And
Thanks so much for coming on, man.
Word up.
Appreciate it.
yeah. All right, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Black Bull Bout.
Peace.